Hello and welcome to Ward Talk, CTN's look at the political scene in Ann Arbor. I'm your host, Bonnie Gabowitz. We'll be discussing issues and solutions with the City Council members from our 5 wards on the 3rd Wednesday of each month. Joining us is Zach Ackerman from Ward 3. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you for
having me. It's good to see you again.
Always good to see you.
And this is being the month of October. It's just before the election, and so much has gone on this year, but we've got a lot ahead of us. So you're in Ward 3. So let's first talk about Ward 3 in terms of what projects are ongoing, what is new, whatever you want to talk about.
Absolutely. So I think there are a couple items of particular note. DTE, who provides electricity and gas to the city, will be putting in their largest investment ever into the city of Ann Arbor over the course of the next couple years. I bring this up because it's important to the stability of energy access for all of our residents, but Ward 3 in particular, because they're going to be doing construction on the South State substation, which some people may know is near the Bayless Administration Building for the Ann Arbor Public Schools.
Is that land owned by the city or by DTE?
It's owned by DTE. They did go through the city's planning process, and the substation, I think, will look better than it does now, but it will be larger. And that's going to provide for more reliable, more consistent electricity access for our residents. But also, part of the construction is going to be laying new transmission wires from South State Street all the way to just north of Central Campus. And part of that construction zone is going to be in the 3rd Ward. So it's going to come up State Street, cut through some of the neighborhoods around campus, and then finally terminate near the power center.
So how does it impact people who are living in those neighborhoods?
So for some people, their streets are going to be ripped up as we look to the next construction cycle. The construction is going to be as minimally impactful as possible. Generally, we only do construction of about 250 feet at a time. And during the time, if someone's driveway falls within those 250 feet, we'll aim to make sure that they have consistent access to their driveway and that all the construction material or equipment is cleaned up overnight so that they'll have access to their properties just as they would any other evening.
And what is the calendar plan for this? Will this be happening real soon or in the next few months?
So certainly expect as we thaw again after the cold that's coming, but especially the transmission work is going to take the longest. So we're looking at well into 2019. There's always a natural end to the construction cycle in Ann Arbor, which is the start of home football games. So hopefully we'll be clean and done by September of 2019.
So this is a long-range project. You're talking about a year.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it started, it was actually 18 months, but we're into the project already. There's been, to DTE's benefit, a good amount of community engagement, and hopefully some of the feedback that neighbors gave DTE, they're taking seriously and incorporating into their project plan. But DTE and the city partner as we move forward on projects like this, but ultimately DTE does have a right to their electricity and gas lines, even if it's along the city's right-of-way.
Now, is this mostly underground, the work that's being done?
Exactly.
It won't change the visual of the neighborhoods?
No, only during the construction itself. Yep, so everything is going to be underground, which provides for the most consistent energy distribution, so that's great. And the transmission lines will be bigger, so they'll be providing more consistent and more energy well into the future.
And is this project something that was done in other neighborhoods, or is this the first one to be done?
So this is a citywide investment. So this is connecting substations with bigger transmission wires, which are going to affect the grid of the entire city. But it is of note to Ward 3 residents because some folks will have some of those transmission wires along their streets, particularly those folks who may live along Granger Road or South and North Forest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I understand there's been some concentration in improving the traffic calming in the whole city, but especially in Ward 3. So what's happening with that?
So for those neighbors who have come in contact with the traffic calming program, they know what it is. But for those who don't, your neighborhood streets should be the safest that we have in the city. We want cars going slowly so that residents of any age, be they your kids or your parents, can walk and cross the street safely. Sometimes in Ann Arbor, our local streets are used as cut-throughs, and that's dangerous. That's high speed, that's a lot of traffic, and generally not driving behavior we want to see when we step out of our front door. So the traffic calming program is aimed to give residents the opportunity to petition their city government to have us come out and put in infrastructure that will produce a safer street for local residents.
So in other words, they can say, we have a problem in this intersection. This
Yeah.
is the problem. What can you do about it?
Exactly right. And right now, they can petition us, and it's anyone's right. They just talk to their neighbors and fill out a sheet. But the level at which it takes to get into the program is really high. And actually, most streets aren't able to get into the program because of certain criteria that eliminate them from eligibility.
Is that criteria that the city requires or the state requires?
The city, and that's a problem. So luckily, council started looking into this in 2016, and we're hopefully going to be moving forward with some updates. The first draft of it failed at city council. Despite gaining a majority of votes, it didn't gain enough votes to be passed. And that's going to leave a couple streets in my ward, in the exact same situation they are in now, which is having a dangerous situation, but not being able to enter the program because of our outdated criteria.
And you're also including in this the cyclists as well. I mean, anyone using the street.
Exactly right. Our modern way of thinking about our road infrastructure is that we want it to be usable and safe for drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. It's really anyone who's using the street. And if people have been getting on these new Bird scooters lately, safe for them as well.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything the citizens can do about pushing for this or making your job easier to get this started?
Absolutely. I think the biggest piece of feedback we got when the updates to the traffic calming program failed to go through council was that it wasn't enough resident input. And so I encourage people to write their city council members and give their input about how these updates are necessary, and that maybe lay out specifically what sorts of conversation you'd want to have with city engineers before infrastructure was put in your street. But ultimately, please advocate that these things are important. And I know folks living on Baldwin, I know folks living on Yost, on Pittsfield, they need these updates, and they can't come soon enough.
And one last question about this. Would you say the school areas, the school zones, are in a better situation, are a little bit safer because it is a school zone and there's been a little more action taken?
That's exactly right. So while the traffic calming program looks at neighborhood streets, we have a separate program, actually two separate programs, for dealing with pedestrian and cyclist safety around schools. And we started with the elementary schools, we started with the high schools and middle schools on major corridors and are now moving to the elementary schools. And we want to get to a point where every parent feels safe having their kid walk to school. So the elementary schools are mostly situated in neighborhoods, so it's kind of two birds with one stone because we get to put improvements near the schools to keep kids safe, but also they serve the entire neighborhood. So that's been great, but this is just another opportunity, an important one, especially for streets that get a lot of cut-through traffic between Packard Stadium, Washington, and the like.
Right. And of course, the road improvement is continuing throughout the city as well, and not just your ward, but throughout.
Absolutely.
And that's ongoing.
Absolutely. We have a new, it's a fancy way of saying roads plan, but pavement asset management plan.
Oh,
and every time, but every time we're redoing a major corridor, we're keeping every user in mind. So that's the driver, the pedestrian, the cyclist, and making sure that everything is up to compliance with the ADA to make sure our disabled neighbors have just as much access to the streets and parks as everyone else.
Okay, great. Now, this being the month of October, this is the last show we'll have before the November election, and we've been talking a lot about some of the issues, but I really want to make sure that the viewers can know where to get information and know what issues are specifically impacting their city.
Yeah.
Because I know we also have some county voting going on for some county issues.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of the issues for Ann Arbor that the citizens actually have a chance to say what they want.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm honored to be the final interview before the election. It's a busy ballot. It's a really critical election. It's both the midterm at the federal level, the state level, and then there are a number of very important local city council elections, as well as local ballot initiatives that people will have the opportunity to be the most direct part of the democracy they can be. So there are 3 local ballot initiatives, A, B, and C. A revolves around the library lot and the future of a publicly owned downtown property. B revolves around how do we fill vacancies on council ahead of an election cycle. And C is an update to some of our parks funding.
Okay, so we have those 3. Let's just start with one, and we'll continue and talk about as much as we need to.
Absolutely.
So let's just start with the first one.
Yeah. So the first is probably the most controversial. I can't imagine Prop B or Prop C being terribly controversial, but Prop A has been the focus of a lot of community attention. The library lot, for those who don't know, is the roof of the underground parking structure, which now is itself a surface parking lot, just north of the downtown branch of the Ann Arbor Public Library.
And it's right next to the public library.
Exactly, yep.
And when you look at it, it looks rather narrow. Is that deceiving?
It is rather narrow. So the entire property is less than an acre. It's 0.8 acres. And so the future of it is kind of left in two general hands. If Prop A, which is Proposition A at the local level, passes, it would be preserved in perpetuity as a city center commons. Some people refer to that as a central park. What's not there is a funding mechanism to have anything built as a park. So likely it would just remain in perpetuity as a surface parking lot, which I don't think really serves many people besides the small handful who choose to park there for an hour or 2 to get to the library a day. So the other option, if voted down, we will move forward with a contract that we entered with an entity called Core Spaces. They're a private developer who would be building a hotel, apartment buildings, retail space, and a public plaza of 12,000 square feet, which is actually, when you compare to the total 40,000 square feet of usable potential parkland, is actually a very significant chunk. And they would offer to pay for it into the future. So that funding mechanism that we don't have for a public park, they would be providing for a public plaza.
All right, and we have a lot to talk about with this.
Certainly.
We're going to be taking a break, and when we get back, we'll dig into this.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. We want to hear from you, so please email us questions to ctn@a2gov.org or tweet us at #CTNInArbor. We're taking a break now, and we'll be coming back with more from Ward 3.
Okay, you're registered to vote. That's great. Good job.
So now what? Don't just sit around waiting for your next election day.
But wait, when is that anyway?
Usually, there's a big election on the first Tuesday in November, but sometimes it's on the second, just to keep you on your toes.
There are sometimes other important elections in May or August, depending on where you live and what's up for a vote.
You might be choosing a candidate for a primary or general election.
Or nonpartisan seats, like judges, which really matter if you're in trouble with the law.
There can also be issues like ballot initiatives, millages, referendum, or deciding your city's official song.
Okay, maybe not that last one.
Some of these can get complicated, which is why it's so important for you to do your research.
Of course, that's easier said than done.
For starters, we recommend looking at your sample ballot when it becomes available, so you can see exactly what you'll be voting on.
Don't just look at who has the fanciest yard signs or political ads. Read up on the candidates and issues from multiple sources.
Just make sure they're places you can verify.
Even better, why not hang with a few friends before the election and talk politics? Getting well informed for an election is an ongoing practice, and it's what really makes democracy work. So don't just wait for game time, get those voting muscles in shape.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz, and this is Ward Talk. We're speaking with Zach Ackerman from Ward 3, and we were right in the middle of talking about the election coming up in November. We were just getting started with the library lot.
Yes.
And I was getting a visual of what it looked like, and you were saying it was about 0.8 of an acre, you said.
Precisely right.
Right, and you had just started to say that I guess the density of the proposed building of the 17 stories really has a lot of use. Just to clear up for our viewers, at what stage are we in terms of the builders came, there was a big, amazing competition for different builders to come in and say, this is what we propose, and you had a lot to choose from. You ended up choosing this one particular builder with a $10 million offer, I understand, with a substantial amount of money going towards affordable housing, which I knew was looked really good. And yet, the sale hasn't happened. So legally, at what state are we in? Are they just on hold because we have a vote now coming up where citizens are going to say, yes, we want this particular purchase to go through, or no, we want to do something on our own?
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there, and that was a really good synopsis of the situation. In April of 2017, City Council did vote to sell the air rights above the land. So we would hold on to the rights to the actual physical property. They would just own everything above, inch 1. This way, we have more control over what they build. But you're right. It was a process in which 14 different builders submitted really impressive designs for what could happen there. That was narrowed down to a short list of 5, then 2 finalists, and we moved forward with this $10 million offer to build a 17-story building. Of those $10 million, $5 million will go directly to our affordable housing fund, and that's projected to house up to 500 families or individuals without housing in Ann Arbor today.
And I just want to interject at this moment, not to go off topic, but right now Ann Arbor is seeing a need for affordable housing, more so because now the workforce in Ann Arbor is having a tough time getting to work if they can't afford to live there or use public transportation to get to work on time. So it seems like an important timing to really be able to do something with affordable housing.
Yeah, I think it really is the issue of our time. We are pricing more and more of our neighbors out every year, and it's something that affects me personally. It's difficult to stay in Ward 3, but this is a community I love, and I'm committed to trying to make it more accessible to more people. I think if you work here or you spent your life paying taxes here, you deserve the opportunity to continue to live here. I'm not saying that's a right, but certainly the opportunity, and it's way too hard right now. So yeah, the ability to build 500 new units of affordable housing with the $5 million that this project would offer is incredible, and it's one that is difficult to pass up. And the people will have an opportunity to voice whether or not affordable housing is important to them. And that would be a no vote on Prop A. A yes vote on Prop A would be to preserve the property as it is today, which is the roof of a parking structure.
And I know there are people who say, we want to have this more available to the public as for a park or for a place to go and enjoy life.
Yeah.
And I know there was a committee that actually had some ideas.
Yeah.
So can we go online somewhere and see what all the issues are and what the both sides are saying?
Yeah.
So people who are going to vote actually know what they're voting for or against.
Absolutely. So the League of Women Voters is a terrific organization that provides an online resource where you can enter in your street address, and they'll actually give you a sample of the ballot and some background information on each item that you'd be voting on. You can go to their website at vote411.org or vote411.org. Terrific resource. It's right at your fingertips.
Plus, I understand League of Women Voters is also on CTN broadcasting, so you can actually meet the people who are talking about the issues.
You heard it here first. Join us on CTN for the League of Women Voters.
And okay, so let's go on. There were other issues. There was a B, and a C, correct?
Yes.
So let's go on to the B.
Yeah, B is kind of a good government reform. It was brought forward by my colleague, Councilmember Eaton, and I believe passed unanimously by Council to go to the ballot. It's a charter amendment, so everyone gets to weigh in and voice whether or not they should move forward. Essentially, as vacancies happen on council from time to time, most recently with a retirement of a council member, we fill those vacancies by a vote of council. Should those line up with elections in short order, that's great, and people will have the opportunity to directly vote for someone soon, but sometimes the timing can be off, and this is an opportunity to just clean up some of that language and make sure the process gives the public as much and as quick of feedback as they should have in choosing who represents them.
So is the way it's set up now taking a longer period of time to get in action a new council member? Is that what you're looking for?
So the way it happens right now is council has the opportunity to appoint someone to fill the vacancy just as quick as council can meet and select an application. However, that person could serve, now that we have 4-year terms, as much as 3 years, because someone could resign or retire within the first year of their term.
And that would be an appointment rather than someone who is voted in by the citizens.
Exactly. So this gives the opportunity for people to vote for a representative sooner in that process, so that we don't have people being appointed for as many as 3 years, or as much as more than 3 years.
And we have C, right?
We have C,
okay.
Which is, I believe, the Parks capital budget, really what goes into the capital maintenance of our park system. It's something that Ann Arbor residents have generously supported for a long time, and I think our parks are outstanding. Every Ann Arbor resident lives within a quarter of a mile of a public park. We have a world-class system, and it's Ann Arbor residents' generosity that makes that happen, and I trust that Ann Arbor residents will be generous once again.
Great. And I know we just have a couple of minutes left, and I did want to touch upon the police oversight, because there is a definite movement in finalizing this whole project of getting a commission together. So where are we at now?
Absolutely. I think it's important to recognize the national dialogue that's happening around police brutality. It is today unlike any other, so transparent and clear that in pockets of this country there are real oversight issues of our police department, in the way that police departments set up policies around how police officers engage with the community or use force. Luckily in Ann Arbor, we have an incredibly professional police force, and I trust them. And I've done ride-alongs and seen interactions with just about any kind of resident you could have. And I've seen that professionalism in action and the consistency of how they engage people of different backgrounds. That said, you know, any city staff member who's handed a gun or a taser and told to protect the rest of our neighbors, you know, should have a level and a layer of oversight, and I believe that's good and prudent.
And this sounds like it's a trust issue. It's an issue of feeling, you know, recognized and valued and protected, and then being treated fairly. And it's not just the big issue of brutality. It has to do with all those other levels of how people are treated. So there are a lot of really levels that people can take offense to or can be pleased with.
Yeah, absolutely. Use of force is, you know, the last thing a police oversight body wants to have to be dealing with. You know, when those moments happen, it's great to have them and a second set of eyes to make sure everything was done by the books. And if the books lay out a scenario where the use of force is appropriate according to the books, then maybe those books need to be changed. They need to change the rules.
Right, and just with the minute we have left, I understand there was a group of citizens who made personal appeals at the meeting, asking, they had a plan of how this could be worked on. And so the council really took into consideration a lot of citizen input as well.
Yeah. Well, so yes, although some members of the community were disappointed in the direction that we took, there was a task force appointed by council to write an ordinance. I voted for that version. The mayor also put forward a version that took a lot of that, but changed a few substantive things in it. As we discuss the direction of the mayor's proposal moving forward, because it's the only one that passed to the next step, I'll be moving a series of amendments to try to bring it back to some of the task force's original.
So it's not a total done deal, that it's not written in stone that this is the way every little detail is going to be.
No, and it's going to be a living document like any other commission or ordinance in the city, and it can change over time. But I think it's important to get the first Police Oversight Commission off to on a good footing and be able to do meaningful work in partnership with the police department.
Okay, well, a lot's on the agenda for this month, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And thank you for coming in and giving us a very detailed look at what's happening for this month.
It's always fun. Thanks so much.
Great. Remember to join us for a new episode every third Wednesday of the month. We want to hear from you, so please email us at ctn@a2gov.org, attention Ward Talk. You can also follow CTN and ask questions on Twitter at twitter.com/CTN in Arbor. We'll make sure to include your questions. For Ward Talk, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz. Until next month.